How's it, guys? Welcome to Bax Chat. A mouthful, I know, but we'll wrap our minds around it and we'll get ready for a good creative chit chat tonight. We're streaming on Open Room TV, live from from Art Cafe in Greenside, Johannesburg. Open Room TV is a music and lifestyle channel running 24/7. Anyone can watch it, openroom.tv. So a big thank you to openroom.tv, Art Cafe, and Greenside Design Centre. And finally, a big house it to our live and online audience. Baxoxe, our Zulu Xhosa word, meaning chit-chat, will set the tone tonight for an informal discussion between two amazing designers of varying disciplines. The show will be broken into three parts. There's Ba, which is a showcase presented by each designer. There's Ko, which is design trivia, and we'll finally finish off with our count session, Ge, our chit-chat session where we will take questions from our live audience. If you're not here, hashtag chit-chat, tweet us, get ready to ask the designers a question, ask them something pertinent, ask them something important, ask them something personal, just get scribbling, get ready. Right, so let's get the chit-chat started. On the couch tonight, we have two esteemed designers, Hugh Fraser and Svi Karp. Hugh, would you like a drink? Go on, be a dear and pour me one too, please. Right, so tonight we'll begin, once he's finished pouring my drink, we'll begin with our chit-chat with Hugh. Hugh is an architect with over 20 years experience. He's currently media manager at Paragon Architects. He's traveled 80 plus countries and counting, correct? So right, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to be here. I have more hours on Keynote than an A380 pilot, so I'm never quite sure why technology continues to outfox us every time. Apologies if I tend not to recycle presentations. I have traveled very widely. I have a collection of imagery of literally millions of images, so I'm not really short there. So I see it as a great privilege to be able to travel. But the roots of this started at the simulcast at UJ of the Design Indaba. And what was quite satisfying is that their technology didn't go particularly well either. I mean, at times we had sound and no picture, and at other times there was picture and no sound. Anyway, there was a presentation by this Dutch trio of graphic designers, and they did something on inspiration through the alphabet. So I thought that would be a good place to start. And because I suffer from ADHD, I can't really focus on any one thing. I thought it was a great place to start. So while I was sitting watching the presentation, I wrote out the alphabet and I started to look at the things that inspired me by alphabet. So of course, if we start with A, Africa, I think inspires all of us and frustrates us as well. The Amazing Race, architecture, and ADHD, which is definitely something that I have. So this is a short little movie that I made. It's about 60 seconds, I think, of some architecture that I had seen, primarily in Europe. What we're looking at here is a boathouse on Lake Constance. And what I liked about it very much was the architecture is represented in technology. So we are able to do things in concrete and in glass that couldn't have been done before. We tend to think of concrete and glass as concrete or glass. But in fact, over the last 2 decades, there have been technological developments in concrete which allows us to pour stuff that we wouldn't have been able to do before. And we can do stuff to glass. We can print on it, we can curve it and bend it and do a whole bunch of stuff like that. So the very simple act, A, of being able to design it with computers and now manufacture it has had a major impact, and that is clearly the Apple Store. I mean, Apple not only as a software company have also made great strides. They take great care in the buildings that they do and the stores that they have around the world, and their style is quite well known. This was in Spain. It was a memorial to the people who were killed in the train bomb in 2006, I think it was. This is an old age home in Holland, although I think in Holland you retire at about 48. So the idea of glass was quite appealing. And in my travels, it was very much the Dutch, the Germans, the Austrians, and the Swiss and Japanese who have made huge strides in technological development. So B would be bicycling. I worked about a month ago. We worked on the Freedom Ride around Johannesburg. We got people to ride a bicycle, which we thought was going to be a 35-kilometer ride, until some policeman took it upon himself to reroute the 6,000 riders, and we rode 55 kilometers. And considering that I was in charge of the communications, I was a very unpopular person on the Monday. But we are going to do it again on the 20th of July, and I think that went down very well. We managed to get, as I said, 6,000 people, including the mayor. What I really wanted to know is, if we had the mayor and the top management, how is it that nobody knew that there was going to be a route change? But anyway, I'm not particularly impressed with the mayor's performance, but he does have quite good legs, so I suppose that's reasonable. This started, as I said, and what was extraordinary is there were a bunch of kids. There were some tiny kids, 6 years old, who actually rode the 55 Ks. So I think it's a great opportunity in Johannesburg. And what was fantastic is there were some guerrillas. Somebody had gone around and put up these posters complaining about cycling in Johannesburg. So C stands for cooking, corrugated iron, Carlo Scarpa. I traveled to Italy a few years ago, and I was still reveling in the fact that you could download these things on Google Maps and print them out. That was remarkable. Who knew that in a couple of years you'd be able to just look at your phone? So things have changed quite a lot. And this is Carlo Scarpa, who's a very famous Italian architect whose work I like very much. And he designed this for the Brion Vega family, and he himself is buried there as well. That's his grave. Very sort of private, personal work. D stands for dance, which is fantastic, diet, and digital design. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, we ran a digital design course in Johannesburg. What I also find amazing about software is the number. I mean, it doesn't matter what anybody does. Nobody is able to work in one set of software. There isn't one software that will do whatever it is that you need to do. You've got to start in A, then move into B, and change into C, and copy into D. So the software we're using here was something called Rhino and Grasshopper. And we built a sculpture, and I had 3 classes, and I asked them where they would like to do it. And one of them decided to put it in the stormwater drain at Maboneng between Arts on Main and Life on Main. And it sat there for about 6 weeks until a couple of storms washed it all away. But it was fantastic. And then the second one, in fact, is still there. That's what it looked like. And we ran the courses in these areas, and everything was going great. And until this guy who was moving into his apartment just walked right through the middle of the presentation with his double bed. Whatever gets you through the day. This was the software itself. It's very perplexing, it's very complicated, but it was generating very beautiful forms. And now at Paragon Architects, we designed Alexander Forbes across the way from the Gautrain station. And this stuff is now filtering its way through into what I've been looking at very closely over the last 4 weeks is 3D printing this dance. And this Delight, which is a sculpture design made out of toilet paper above a hot air vent in Barcelona. And this thing would just dance in the warm air. It was beautiful. E stood for exercise, which at my age is now becoming quite important, experience. And Eladio Dieste, who was this quite remarkable engineer who lived in Uruguay. And he was designing by hand in the 1950s, 60s. He died in 2002. Very much the kind of stuff that we are now doing, what we call parametric modeling. And this is a shopping center that he's got in Montevideo. My friend Mark, who I conned into going to look at a building, he wasn't very happy. He had to walk 15 kilometers to get to this church. And what was beautiful about it is incredibly rational and curvilinear at the same time. And it's done very arithmetically and all done by hand. At the back of his book are all the calculations. And he comes from a place called Salto. Very beautiful work designed out of brickwork. So F stands for film, which I'm obsessed with, FOMO, which I'm definitely obsessed with, and food. I think one of the most important things that causes me to travel is to explore the food around the world, of which there's a lot. G stands for Glenn Murcutt, the Australian architect. Graphic design, which I'm obsessed with as well. And graphics. This was, I was traveling in the extreme far west of China, which is actually predominantly occupied by the Uyghur. And what was very interesting is the other things that you find out when you travel is that this language is Uyghur, but it's written in Arabic. So one assumes that when you see Arabic that it is Arabic, but in fact there are 28 languages that are written. So I thought the graphic was fantastic. Whether I needed some dental care, I'm not so sure about that. I also thought this was a piece of stuff that came out of Holland, because you know the Dutch don't really have that much to do, so they have lots of time to think about stuff. But this was in February, and I thought it was just a fantastic way to play. I mean, how powerful is that, to look at what happened in February and what happened in March? That was Glenn Murcutt. I did a course of his in Australia. Very beautiful work. H stands for Helvetica. But Hiragino is my new one, and Herpo Road is where I live, and the Himalayas where I cycled. So that was my house that I designed 10 years ago, which I wouldn't be allowed to design now because there's too much glass. You know that I'm a font snob. Hi, my name's Hugh, and I'm a font snob. Sorry. So I think there's 3 types of people in the world: those who love Helvetica, those who hate Helvetica, and those who don't know what the hell Helvetica is. But I knew that I was in trouble when I watched this documentary on a Saturday afternoon when I should have been watching rugby, I know, but still. So there's Helvetica Light, Helvetica Medium, Helvetica Bold, and then there's the one that I like at the moment, Hiragino Gothic Kaku Standard, which I prefer. And then the Himalayas, I rode, 5 of us rode over the Himalayas. This was a little 50-second trailer that I made of the trip over the Himalayas. So I might as well own that is me falling into the river. So I stands for, I don't really know what the hell I'm doing with my life, inspiration, and the internet. I mean, I completely love the internet. The fact that you can go and watch a movie and then you go home afterwards and then you study everything about it. J for Josie, Johannesburg. And the fact that we put up fake cell phone towers that look like trees. And we don't even use a South African tree. We use a Norwegian Pinus radiata. I mean, I don't know. But the fact that it's such a varied city. I mean, I do a program on 702 on a Friday morning, and I'm always amazed that by Thursday I still manage to find stuff, the suburbs of Fordsburg or the Faraday Market. I love sometimes the billboards, the fact that we do need to have courage in the city. And there's Brazilian architecture at the Top Star Drive-In, and there's still some people, I mean, none of my friends, but they play polo, which I think is fantastic. K is for kind of crazy. The Killing, which I loved. Koreans, because I loved them because when you fly out of the airport in Seoul, the baggage handlers all line up and wave you goodbye. Our baggage handlers are also using their hands. They're in your luggage. L stands for location, layering, learning, and I don't seem to have any graphics. Michelangelo Antonio, whose movies I love, Mies van der Rohe, the architect, and movies. The Farnsworth House, built in 1945 for Edith Farnsworth, who was a nephrologist just southwest of Chicago. He designed this house and she eventually sued him, and it's now become an icon of modern architecture. What I would have sued him for is the fact that he built it too close to the river and it floods often. And in 1996, it flooded right up into the house. And if one of the panes of glass hadn't failed and exploded, the house would have floated down the river. It did, however, empty it of all the Picasso paintings. They did flout down the river and were never found again. N stands for New School, New York Times, especially the New York Times. I like the fact that you can subscribe to the New York Times online. And this was an installation. I flew to New York to buy a camera because it was cheaper for me to fly to New York for a weekend, buy the camera and come home than it was to buy it here. The fact that you can have the New York Times delivered to your door and nobody will steal it. Although, a friend of mine, I've now heard that if you buy from Amazon, they've got Amazon lockers because people now are stealing stuff. But the fact that you can get the New York Times on Sunday and you can read each one of the sections, which is as thick as the whole of the Star, and that'll last you till the next week. O stands for Oscar Niemeyer, the Brazilian architect, who died I think in December at the age of 104. He got married at 93 for the second time round. And I traveled, I've been to South America quite a few times for the Sao Paulo Biennale, and I flew to 6 cities in 6 days to go and photograph his work. This was in Rio de Janeiro, and that was in Belo Horizonte, and that's in Curitiba. But beautiful work. P stands for people, Paragon, who I work for, passion, which I think is critical for everybody, and power failures. We seem to have quite a few of those. I do a newsletter for our group. There are 80 people that work in our office, and on the one hand it might seem frivolous, but I have got into a lot of trouble this last 2 weeks because I haven't issued it, and the staff look at me like, where's the Tea Time Romeo delight? Q stands for QR code, which I think is fantastic. I think I can't remember what that actually said. R stands for recipes. I love the fact that you can Radio 702, who I do reports for, and the Rea Vaya, which is really fantastic, and Ron Champ, which is the church designed by Le Corbusier. I mean, only architects would get bust like groupies when you go around the world to look at buildings. Scandinavians, signs, sign writing, social media, South Africa. So I wrote some signs in Syria. These guys didn't know how to do the lettering, so I did the lettering for them in the Western script. I'd like to think that it wasn't me who started the war. I'm going to go very quickly through these. The Tea Time Romeo Delight I spoke about, Tokyo, travel, which is kind of childish, to look at the map of all the countries that I've been to. Fraser, that's what I normally get called. V for Vinitecture, which is the book that I wrote as my cousin on wine architecture. W, world music, which I love. The World Cup, which was great for the country. And XYZ. And nobody knows what to write about that. So we'll just take the zoom out. And Zaha Hadid, the Iraqi British architect. Okay, so maybe I think let's just skip. We can just cancel this.
Thank you. You can now take a sip of your wine.
Oh, yes.
And you can pass me mine. So where are you off to next?
Well, actually, if you were to, in fact, if you went onto my computer, pornography is not a problem. Travel sites is. So I saw
big database.
A flight to Beijing was 5,000 rand, and I went to Cape Town last week for a friend's wedding, and that was 4,000 rand. So, like, what do you expect me to do? Cape Town 4,000 rand, Beijing 5,000 rand. I mean, what do you expect? And I've got a friend who lives there, so.
Right, thank you, Hugh. Next, we have the man with the designer beard, Svi Karp. Svi, fashion designer. His collections are captured the eye of Al, Marie Claire, GQ, Voila, Dossier, Gachette, amongst many others. His collections have graced the runways of Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week and SA Fashion Week. He's currently listed as one of the Mail and Guardian's top 200 influential young people in South Africa. So over to you.
Thank you. So, hi everyone, I'm Tzvi. Firstly, I have to apologize to you in advance because I'm not a text snob or font snob, so please don't judge me. Fonts is not my thing. I love Helvetica. My computer design lecturer was very much, he tried to get at someone about Helvetica, but yeah, so please just gentle. Can we get to the session? Please start from now.
The other option.
Right, so technology snob then. No?
Yeah, no. Technology's not my friend.
Right, guys, remember to hashtag chit chat. Start sending through your questions. Thank you, openroom.tv again for hosting us. Watch it again, watch us next time, right? Get going.
Anyway, so before I start my presentation is a little bit more narcissistic, I think, than Hugh's, because I am a bit of a pathological narcissist, unapologetically so. So basically, it's just about my life, what kind of molded me, and the fear that kind of molded me as a designer, and what led to me becoming a designer, and my path that I had. So as soon as we get the visuals, we'll be up and running. So yeah. Okay, I think that's...
Oh, ready to go.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is a quote that inspired me very much when I was 8 years old, and it's, I'm tough, I'm ambitious, and I know I'm tough, I'm ambitious, and I know exactly what I want. If that makes me a bitch, okay. Does anybody know who said that? Do you know who said that?
Joan Rivers.
No. Jason, do you know who said
I
that?
have no idea.
Exactly. It was. You're my new best friend. It was indeed. It was Madonna, and as many of you probably wouldn't believe me, I grew up in a very conservative home to a very conservative family, and I went to a very conservative religious school, and I was very underwhelmed by what I saw, and I don't know, I was very understimulated, and I needed something so much more that I wasn't getting. I read so much, and I loved to draw, and there was something that caused such an anxiety in me, and I never knew what it was until I discovered pop culture, and I realized what it was that I was so afraid of, and I was so afraid of mediocrity that I saw, and my escape growing up was pop culture. So obviously, Madonna was one of my earliest sort of role models and icons, just because she was so unapologetic and proud of what she was doing, and obviously other influences such as Boy George, I was obsessed with, his androgyny, Gwen Stefani, Courtney Love, Kurt Cobain, the Spice Girls. I wanted a Spice Girls themed bar mitzvah. My mom said no. I don't know. Apparently it wasn't tasteful. I don't know what is good taste. Marilyn Manson, and of course, Clueless, one of my favorite films growing up. My So-Called Life. This is the TV that I was exposed to as a kid. Dennis Rodman was my favorite sports icon. Basketball player, for those of you that don't know, and that him in the bride's dress was what he showed up wearing to his to this book signing of his autobiography. I mean, these are contemporary, sort of sports stars of their time. They weren't underground. Everyone knew who they were. So then I discovered Vogue from a very early age, and these were the editorials that we were seeing, very, very different to the editorials we're kind of seeing today, where they're very commercial and they were kind of taking risks. I mean, we're looking at, this is very representative of the time, the grunge scene, obviously street fashion mixed with couture. That's a Christian Lacroix jacket with a pair of Levi's jeans at the time. Very obsessed with that. And of course, it led me to question who were the forces behind fashion. And at the time, the most celebrated designer was John Galliano, this young, hotshot, up-and-coming designer who was named creative director of Christian Dior. And that's just one of the many visions and one of the many visually spectacular pieces that he gave us over the years. And seeing this growing up just completely blew my mind away. So I saw all of this, and this is what I saw when I was a child, and I felt very lonely because firstly, children weren't really interested in pop culture or in fashion, and also I didn't grow up in a time where the internet was as accessible as it was today. So I had to do all my research at public libraries, the local video shop, TV, magazines, and I absorbed as much as I could, and I tried to understand and research as much as I could, because when I saw all of this, I realized that there was this greater world out there, and I made myself a promise when I was a kid that I would never become mediocre, and I continued to look at these visuals and read about these people's lives, and I knew that one day I wanted something like this for my own life, and I refused to become mediocre. And so fast forward a few years, I finished matric, and I went on to study biomedical engineering at Wits. And it was a great time. It opened my mind up to a lot of things, academically as well as socially. I met amazing, inspiring people. I had inspiring lecturers, friends and friendships that I formed that I'll have for life, I believe. As well as, at the time, I definitely was opening my mind up to different forms of music, literature, underground parties, and I was just experimenting. I did a lot of traveling, obviously not as much as Hugh, but it definitely was it was a time that opened my mind up to a lot, and I felt that I was growing up until it was time to graduate. It happened very quickly, and I looked around and at my graduation, and I was there in my cap and my gown, and I looked around, And I got the shock of my life, and I had the biggest panic attack because I looked around and I saw everybody looked exactly like I did. I'd blended into this world that I promised myself as a child that I wasn't going to. And I disappointed everyone. I disappointed Madonna, I disappointed Andy Warhol, I disappointed Dr. Seuss. And overall, like, I disappointed the most important person. I disappointed myself because I had become mediocre. I was on the way to this designated path, which I kind of never thought I was. I was a grown-up, and I was just like everyone else. And so basically, I took a year to do whatever I needed to do, and I basically I turned everything around. And sorry. So yeah, back to Dr. Seuss. Why fit in when you were born to stand out, you know? And so basically, I made the decision to study fashion design, and and interestingly enough, I thought that I would actually blend, even though it was a very small, secluded kind of environment and a very small, secluded form of study, I thought that I would kind of blend in and find my place. And I was very pleasantly surprised to discover that I definitely didn't blend in at fashion school. I was very strongly opinionated. I argued with a lot of my lecturers, and my design aesthetic was definitely not the conventional design aesthetic, so a lot more arguments there. But the thing that it taught me is that to put the mental into experimental, and don't be afraid to beep up. So yes. So that was just a little bit about my work, because after I graduated, I was thrown kind of into the deep end of the fashion world. And the truth is that Shayna, my friend that I studied with, can vouch for this. I never actually wanted to be a designer. I wanted to write about fashion. I wanted to be involved in the fashion scene and observe and write about it. And I was kind of thrown in through my work. I got great opportunities and I became a designer. And so, but I definitely knew from the get-go that I didn't want to become a designer that was commercially viable. I didn't want to become a commodity, and I didn't want to fit into a retail space. And still to this day, I think if I would see my clothes or somebody wearing my clothes in the street, I would feel like I was doing an injustice firstly to myself, and also like I'd be doing something wrong. I'd like to develop looks and aesthetics that in the future can be commercially viable, but not in my lifetime. I'd like to leave a foreground for the future of fashion. So here's a little bit about, like, these are just some of my work, some of my collections that I put together. This was my graduation collection that I did, and it was later shown at Fashion Week. So it was my first Fashion Week that I did. Same collection. This is my second collection at Fashion Week, and it was inspired by Bret Easton Ellis's novel Less Than Zero, or more specifically from the opening title of the novel, which stated "People are afraid to merge." So it was inspired by parasites and panel lines of freeways merging, kind of thing. And this was my most recent collection. So yeah. And then there's me as a person, because I think that something that I discovered is that as much as people were intrigued or disturbed or wanted to know more about my designs, they also wanted to know about me as a person. And there were definitely certain forces within the media and within the fashion world that told me to act in a certain way and told me to sort of go about doing things in a certain way. And I really wasn't particularly interested in that. I just kind of wanted to be myself. And so I was very inspired by this. This is actually a saying from Kurt Cobain, who said, "I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not." So basically, I wanted, like, people must either digest me and digest my work, because I don't really want to blend into a society, and I don't ever want to be mediocre. So this was me at my first fashion show at Fashion Week. I was actually crying because I was very nervous. this is me. My studio is based in the CBD, so this is right outside my studio in the CBD. We're just taking a walk, and people with a camera wanted to snap us. That's my friend who I share the studio with, Baxoxe. He's also a fashion designer. I was the face of Jessica Rain's label Rain. It was 2 years ago, just from having such a crazy look and such a crazy aesthetic. So she asked me to be the face of her label. This was shot at the My Market in Johannesburg, downtown. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but basically it's the spiritual healing market. And that's with my friend and one of my closest friends and my muse, Mante Rebane. And she's a very talented performance artist and a great friend of mine, as I said. And basically, the thing that I'm so inspired about her is that we're both kind of these creatures that walk around the CBD, and we're so unapologetic about the pointing and the staring that goes on and the screaming, because, you know, we do get a lot of attention and sometimes negative attention for the way we dress in conservative South Africa. But I think the thing that we both appreciate is the beauty of causing a reaction just through sartorial fashion, creating a dialogue of what you can do. And she's very unapologetic about the way she dresses and the way she looks. And yeah, I think that's why we get along so well. So that's, I mentioned the CBD. That's me in Soweto with a very traumatized group of churchgoers. And then basically just as I go on, I remember reading Atlas Shrugged from Ayn Rand, and this quote sticks with me whenever I'm creating or whenever I feel like I may be not doing something right or blending in, and it's, inventor is a man who asks why of the universe and lets nothing stand between the answer and his mind. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Remember, hashtag chit chat, get the questions coming in. I'm sure, well, we've got one really well-traveled person, but I'm sure he doesn't have anything on your wardrobe.
Oh, sorry, my socks are Paul Smith.
Do you want to say that out loud?
It's the best I was going to get.
Right, so the next part of the show is a question and answer session. So this will start getting you to engage. I'll ask the questions, you give me the most creative answer. I'll decide upon that who's the most creative and therefore who's the winner. So you grab your squeaker, you grab your tweaker. Right, so let's get going. Right, both work. Does yours work? Good, good. Right, question one. So why do shirt sleeves have buttons?
So,
Squeak, tweak. Yes.
why do they have buttons?
Yes.
They're a substitute for a cuff, a detachable cuff.
No. You?
Why do shirt sleeves have buttons?
Yes. Why do your cuffs have buttons? Why are there these buttons?
Functional buttons.
Right, so
In Joburg winter, you can close the damn thing.
well, it is getting rather chilly. Napoleon made the decision, you see, that sailors need buttons on their cuffs so that they don't wipe their noses on their shirts. Perfectly plausible.
I can still wipe my nose with the buttons.
Get hooked.
Well, actually, he can't wipe his nose with the buttons because he'll definitely be in trouble.
Right, what is ergophobia?
Ergophobia. It's
Squeak, tweak, squeak.
It's from the Greek.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I've run out of airtime. You have to pay extra for this one. It's a fear of...
Of what? You both do it?
Ergonomics. Doesn't
No.
have to do with that.
It's a fear of working. Both of which I don't think you have.
No, our government has that. It's particularly ANC
Wait, I'm still
thing.
confused.
Right, where and why was the thong invented?
Was that?
Thong, the G-string.
Oh. So Cisco could write a song about it?
No. So they were around before Cisco.
But like, how is that relevant?
Well, this is the ridiculous question. You must give me the creative answer.
Why was the song...
Because if you didn't have the back bit, the front bit would just hang around doing nothing.
Kinda close.
Dental floss? Like as a substitute during the war? No?
So, many moons ago, the mayor of New York decided that exotic dancers were showing far too much flesh. So he came up with the concept of the G-string to cover them up a bit. So they're flapping around, fairly close.
So imagine if we called an eye string.
Right, what is a grabitologist?
A what?
Grabitologist.
Grab. Somebody who goes vintage shopping and like has to fight off everything else from everyone else. I am a gravitologist. No, it's a real thing. When you go and like you find like a great like Comme des Garçons shirt and you're like running to get it's a real thing. I am one. I promise you. No, seriously.
So they're not going to fight you for yourself.
No. No.
Fairly close. You got an idea?
Wait, does it also take place at strip clubs?
No.
Jacob Zuma when he sees a budget. You can't help it.
Right, so each put one of these around your arm.
What is a gravitologist?
Oh, sorry, a gravitologist is someone who collects neckties. So that would mean I'm a gravitologist, although I'm not wearing one tonight. Right, so if you had one of these around your arm, what country would you be in, Hugh? And why would you be wearing it?
Japan, it's Hello Kitty, and I've just come from a club in Tokyo.
Almost. Any idea? Instead of just staring?
I would be coming from a hospital after taking
Careful now.
far too many shots at a little underground club. And Hello Kitty is nursing me back to health, but also she's very angry, so she's the police side of her is coming out.
Well, that's what... So, it will be Tokyo, yes, and you will be a policeman. But if you've not been a very good policeman, then you're being embarrassed by being forced to wear Hello Kitty armbands throughout the day.
For what?
Yeah.
For not doing your work properly. So that's an embarrassment.
I'm kind of proud.
You can keep it.
We'll catch on here amongst our police, no doubt.
Right, so when I started the show, I started by not saying the term exactly correctly, which I'm going to refer to as a tartle. Now, what is a tartle? Get your squeakers ready. So what is tartling?
Chatting?
Tartling. It's how you say titling in the south of Johannesburg. Like, tell me what your tartle is. And when you come back from hard pork.
Is it where you go in drag, but you want to be the trashiest drag queen out there? Tartling. Tartling. You look like a
You
tartling.
get a good point for that. Well, you both
You
get
look like a
good point for
tartling.
that.
I'm gonna make a catch on.
What hashtag tartling?
Oh yeah.
Right, so tartling is when you're under pressure and when you're going to introduce somebody and you feel like you're under pressure and you actually forget their name.
Oh god.
So that was my pressure at the beginning of the show. So I tartled.
It's
Right.
very easy to turn tartle into startle.
Hi, I'm tartled and startled. It's bright lights. It's the live people. Well, I hope they're live. Right, what does bitch the pot mean? Bitch the pot.
Bitch the pot.
Yes.
Is that...
It's where you get really bitchy after smoking too much marijuana.
No, that's bitch, comma, the pot.
An answer?
Sorry, I'm also a grammar snob.
Well, it's just, there's no commas, just bitch the pot. It's not like you're angry in the kitchen.
It's not really complaining about the quality of the pots.
So, why don't you bitch the pot and pour yourself some more wine?
Oh, don't need encouragement.
That's what it means.
Do you?
Yes.
I don't ask him twice.
Thank you. Right, so pandas are often shown footage of other pandas. Why?
Eat shoots and leaves. Grammar snob.
Oh, come up with something.
Because to remind them that life isn't black and white.
Well, it is like a black and white film. Actually, it's like black and white pornography.
Bring on the
So they
19
watch footage of other pandas mating to encourage them to mate. Can you believe
They're
it?
quite advanced, eh?
Redundant.
Those
as well.
pandas, wow. That's advanced. Like, we do the same, don't we?
True, true.
Those pandas,
Purple in colour.
yeah. Well, no. I mean, to each their own. Whatever you're into.
Right, gosh, when is difficult? None. I do. I win. Okay, so Hugh Laurie once said, life is like your favorite socks, but it turns out you only have one. What is one of your favorite possessions, Hugh?
my hard drives, because it's got all my imagery on it.
And black and white footage.
And my camera, I suppose. Yeah.
Right. Remember to hashtag chit chat. Is everybody doing it? Good, good. Sveen,
Yes.
a rantipole is a rude and unruly young person. What do you want to be when you grow up and you are rude and unruly?
Oh, I don't want to grow up. I'd rather be rude and unruly in my youth forever.
And rude and unruly how?
I just want to sit on a park bench and like scream various obscenities at young people. Just out of anger and jealousy.
What are us waiting in the line for the bus?
Oh no, that's so bourgeois. Can't I do it outside of like a really amazing store or something? That's lovely. Yes.
Well, you can start doing it in town on one of your walks.
Okay. They do it to me, so I might as well get them back for us. It's okay.
Right, poke on a trophy is the act of cultivating a beard. What other hipster trends, I'm not mocking you, what other hipster trends do you think are outgrowing themselves?
Tattoos.
Why?
Because they're indiscriminate. They've lost the value of joy. I mean, I think Europe is probably ahead of us, but and I've got a tattoo. It's over here. I'll show you. They need to be more kind of considered. I think tattoos are overrated.
And you too? I seen a member when I came in earlier today. I saw a member of our audience.
Oh, a member of the audience.
Yeah.
Sorry, English is not my
So
first
a member
language.
of the audience is covered in them. You should face her. Tell her that a lot of hers are irresponsible. Let's see what happens.
Well, I do in fact have a tattoo, which at the time was like a leaping dolphin, but now it's becoming more of a slumping dogfish. And I'm not sure the technology has kept up with it, that I can make sure that it remains what it was.
Well, seeing as you're quite a good photographer, what about how are your Photoshop skills?
Not on me.
Right, we're now into our third and final segment of the show. So we all hashtagged. Right? Are we ready to ask some questions? Right, so we've got our first member of the audience who's going to ask a question. And you are?
Hi, I'm Des. My question was just taken away from me, but I will ask it anyway. If the answer is 42, what is the question?
What is your age excluding that?
And I think the real question there is, you know, it's so easy to get into the mainstream, but you guys have obviously got beyond that. How easy is that, or how difficult is that? That I think is for both of you. Just, it's so important, and you're so special. How do you do that?
Okay, you first.
Me first.
Yeah.
Use your squeaker.
Well, thank you, firstly. It is really difficult and it's really challenging because there is no support system for it, and especially when nobody understands and they want to turn you into a commodity, and they want to compartmentalize you and they want to turn you into something, or they want to try and understand you when you don't necessarily even understand yourself. So you just have to kind of shut yourself off from the perceptions of everyone else. And as I mentioned earlier, like, I am a narcissist, so I'm so wrapped in my own self and like what I'm doing, and I become so obsessed. But my narcissism is directly proportionate to the sense of self-loathing when I'm creating, because when I'm during the creative process, everything that I do, I'm doubting and I'm analyzing and I'm thinking, no, this is wrong, it's not good enough. I'm pushing myself and I hate what I'm doing. And as soon as I see my final product and I see that I've executed my vision, that's when the narcissism takes over, and that's where I'm like, wow, I was able to do that. And I go crazy. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Okay, so from Twitter we have, do you think Bruce Lee would be quick at drafting?
If he could use his feet as well, yeah.
And was Michelangelo really a Ninja Turtle?
Yes.
Right, another one from Twitter. Do you think the six-armed goddess Shiva would be good at breakdancing?
Yeah.
No, that's
More
How so?
flexible, because she'd be more flexible and she'd have more moves. Like, you know what she'd be better at though than breakdancing? Voguing.
Give us a description of Vogue. I don't know what voguing is.
You don't know what voguing
No.
is? What, do you twerk?
I try not to.
You try
Very
not
good at
to?
it, but I try not to.
Handstand. Headstand, sorry. Voguing, you know. So imagine doing that with six. Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right, one for you, Hugh, also from Twitter. If you could sum it up, what is your biggest inspiration and why?
Gee.
Is it 26 letters of the alphabet?
It would probably have to be. It would probably have to be your local environment, because, you know, on the one hand, it's sometimes one of the reasons why I travel so much is because I'm not paying attention to home. And if you can still find the new in the stuff around you in the everyday, then you would be inspired. I mean, I realize that I travel a lot, and it's very, very. It's a huge privilege for me. But what you've actually got to do is develop the skill in discovering the ordinary, and that I think is a fantastic skill.
And then that said, what is the worst place that you've traveled to?
I think I'm going to get into trouble here. I think the worst capital that I've ever been to is Gaborone, which I tell Tandeka, who works in my office, she thinks I'm an asshole. I like the way that went past as I said that, so you couldn't hear what I said.
Yes, it was
But
planned.
I would say, again, there's almost nowhere that I would regret having been. I think because travel's such a great thing, there's almost nowhere. But probably Gaborone is the worst city that you can go to.
Favorite place in Joburg?
My favorite place in Joburg?
Yes.
It changes from week to week, but this week it's Fordsburg. I mean, I know Fordsburg well, I've been going there for years, but what I like about it is that it's been reinvigorated with new immigrants. And I know where you can find fresh coconuts that are legally bought in from Mozambique at 8 Rand a coconut. And it's on the corner of it and streets.
And you, Tzvi, favorite place in Joburg?
I mean, I love I'm like you. I mean, I don't travel at all, really. And the thing is that there's so much to discover in Joburg, and being based in the CBD and being a pedestrian in the CBD, I just walk all over, and you find the most beautiful spots. And I don't know, every day is kind of inspiring, and every day you find something new and you learn something new, and you find out of a different immigrants or different cultures that are socializing in a certain section or selling something, or a Rastafarian selling their dreadlocks.
Try getting a meal in Johannesburg.
It's amazing. No, seriously, it's amazing.
And then, Tzvi, what do you think? This is another question from Twitter, #ChitChat. What do you think of current pop culture?
Current pop culture, I care very little for it. I mean, I showed you, the images that I showed you earlier. I was so, growing up, that was contemporary popular culture, in the 90s. And today, if you had to look at that out of context, you look at it today, that would be underground culture, because we're not seeing it. I think today's contemporary popular culture is so mediocre. You open up a magazine. I mean, I celebrate a little bit of it. I mean, I'm very intrigued by Lady Gaga. And Rihanna has her place in the world. I don't really appreciate her, but she has her place in what she's doing. The way she changes her outfit so quickly, and she's so in touch with the times. But I care very little for the Kardashians or Justin Bieber, or it doesn't intrigue me. And I don't think I would be the designer I was today, and I don't think I'd be as engrossed in popular culture or as obsessed with it if I was a child today.
Right, a question from our studio audience. Tzvi, you said that if you saw someone wearing your work in the street, you would be disappointed. But what is your responsibility to all the little Tzvis that are going to be running around?
The Tzvilets.
I would never want you to emulate my work, and I would never want, develop your own sense of style. Challenge the barriers and the boundaries in your own life, and create your own look and create your own persona and become a superstar in your own right. Don't look up to me. I'm old, I'm done. Everyone can do it. You just have to stop caring what everybody thinks about you, take a risk, walk out the house, and just not think too much about it.
And Hugh, what is your responsibility to all the little Hughs?
Thank God there won't be any. But I
the
agree.
Aspiring Hughs.
I do agree. What worries me the most about the era in which we live is the Control V, Control C, copy paste, copy paste. There's too much of that, and nobody's doing new document, and that's what worries me, because we're working on something called Future Spaces, which is a website that looks at South African architecture and design. And there's too much, it's very easy to generate a magazine program and and the internet is fantastic. Of course the internet is fantastic, but somebody has got to be generating new material. So I think, people who take a step back and look at something new. So full marks to people who do that.
Copy, paste, pass.
Pause.
Can I ask you a question?
Perhaps. What is it?
I'd like to know,
Hugh, a question.
Yes.
I thought you were about me.
I understand the you part now.
Will you two stop playing with my name?
Okay. So may I ask you a question?
Of course.
I'd like to know, in terms of architecture, obviously in terms of fashion, you see a direct kind of a direct inspiration from popular culture to fashion, and and they cross-pollinate, and you see they borrow from each other, and but obviously architecture takes a little bit longer. So by the time a trend is sort of come and gone, it's a little bit behind. So in terms of, and the way the world works, in terms of the internet that you say you're so inspired by, how do you stay relevant? How does architecture stay relevant and contemporary when in a world where fashion changes so vastly and so quickly and so instantaneously?
It's an excellent question, because architecture is the slowest moving of all the arts, but at the same time it's the most enduring of all of them, because it is a record. I mean, you look back and once you put up a building from any era, it sits there. I'm slightly biased in the fact that I always thought that buildings were like houses and people invested in them. And the irony of it is that buildings are a representation of the civilization whence they come. And I think we're only now moving into an era which we will look back and think that buildings have become disposable. And I'm worried that it is. Like Johannesburg, for example, it is already a disposable city. I mean, we're 100 years old, more than 100 years old, and there are almost no buildings from more than 80 years ago. So I think that architecture is going to reflect its disposable society from which it comes. And buildings are going to they're going to be designed for a much shorter life. I think they're going to be more electronic. I think they're going to be, the materials are going to be disposable as well. I mean, I think that already people only look at, in the past we would have looked at a building as having an endless life. Now buildings are going to have a 15 or 20 year life, which is kind of titillating, but disturbing, because when we look back 100 years from now, you won't see anything from that period. So yeah.
Although if you look at something like Trump Towers, I mean, it's very obviously and very overtly 80s, you know,
Yes.
that like conspicuous consumption and greed and wealth and
Well, if you
glamour.
go to Sandton City is now being covered in glass. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Sandton City, but what I like about it is that the building represents the era from whence it came. That kind of ugly concrete architecture. It's not my favorite, but that's what it is. So if we're just constantly changing everything all the time, where's the wardrobe?
Too true. Right, we're going to wrap it up and dispose of you two soon. Seeing as Joburg's a
I am
disposable
not
city.
disposable.
Guys, remember again to hashtag chit chat, follow Open Room TV, follow Odd Cafe at Odd Cafe, follow Greenside Design Center. Come join us for the next Bax. Tartle. Toads Tartles. And thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our live audience. Thank you to our online audience. We really appreciate it. So we're getting the creative chit chat going. It's not going to stop. It's really just going to continue. And like Einstein said, creativity is contagious. So pass it on. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Right, so let's bitch the pot and have another drink.